Hi, my name is Fatima. I am one of the co-founders of Collective 365, an organization committed to celebrating and investing in Black and Brown communities in DC, Maryland, and Virginia by way of grants and capacity building. And part of our mission is also to provide education. And we are so excited to have Demetrius of Black Men Read to talk about mentorship, the power of books, and anything else that comes up in our great conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, tell us kind of what is Black Men Read, why that, and also what's kind of on the horizon for you all right now, like what's coming down the pipe.
Well, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for having us. We're really honored to be here. My name is Demetrius Frazier. I'm the founder and executive director of Black Men Read, a nonprofit based right here in Chesterfield, Virginia. Our goal and mission is to ignite social change through opportunities and literacy in the Black community. We do that in a number of ways. We do that in the school system. Specifically, we started in Henrico County, and now we're expanding to Richmond City. We do that through a number of different programs. So one of our most popular is Books and Bars, where we merge students' love of music, hip hop, and poetry to reading and also fun. We also have something that we try to use to develop some of the skill sets that a lot of the students have called Poetry and Expression, where we talk about, we help coach and mentor, and we create a platform for the living poets that are out there right now. And then we have other things like Lit at the Crib, which looks to build home libraries. We come into schools and read with them, and we also support the programming that's already at the school system. We also have one of the biggest and dopest Black male book clubs out there. Black Men Read is everywhere. We're really on Facebook. That's our main hub. But we also have a Richmond local chapter that centers in on trying to give a space for Black men to kind of connect on reading. But if you ask us where we're going, I think it's just growth. We're really trying to expand and reach the students that need to be met in different cities and localities. Some will be in Richmond, some will be in different areas of the country. We have what we call the greatest crisis that we've had in a long time in literacy. And if you look at all the numbers, and I don't want to spew out a number because by the time someone sees this 6 months from now, the numbers may change or get worse. But we have a lot of students, especially Black and Brown communities, that are really struggling with reading. They're not excited about it. They don't know how to read. And what we're trying to do is to be a part of that change. We partner with schools, public libraries, in-school libraries. We partner with nonprofits like Collective 365. To try to build that programming into what was happening in our community. So we're really proud of the growth we've had so far, but we know it's just a drop in the bucket for where we're trying to head towards. So that's why the work we're doing is important. That's why this conversation is such a pivotal one, and we're just happy to be here and discuss what we're doing in Black Men Read.
I love it. So like every time I hear it, so I've heard it before, but every time when you say it, I'm always like, yes, like it's so exciting. I don't think growing up I had any of that. Like not obviously, I know I'm not your target audience, but I'm talking about just in general. I don't remember that being pushed to Black students, let alone Black male students.
No, absolutely not.
So that's exciting. But I would love to know like why for you. Like I know you spoke about like general statistics, and obviously there's a need, but like what was it for you, like that aha moment where you were like, okay, I'm going to invest my blood, sweat, and tears into this?
So I think the why for us came in, and I say that us as my partner, Lance Adams was the co-founder. I think the why for us was we were looking at our particular situation. And when you look back and reflect on how we got through school and college, and for both of us, grad school, it was actually pretty amazing that we got through that without becoming really big readers in our own rights. So let me give you a little bit of my history. I am a product of a single family home. I had a number of uncles and aunts and all that stuff, grandma and cousins galore, but not a lot of them were readers. My mom was a huge reader. One of my uncles was a huge reader, but not the rest. And so in that environment, reading wasn't the thing that was front and center. But through all of that, and I'm not trying to make excuses, or I still wind up being a really good student, AB student in high school, AB student in college, and also went and got my master's. But that's not a typical outcome. Literacy has such a big implication for everything that a student goes through, whether they're in English major or marketing major, science, math, doesn't matter, or they don't even go to college. Literacy has such a big implication of the outcome that could possibly happen in their life. And with that knowledge, knowing that we got here and we didn't read, we wanted to, go back and say, hey, look, we want this to be front and center for a lot of Black males who look like us, but may not have, great outcomes in their life if they don't change this particular portion. So we wanted to invest back and go back to that spot to where that risk is much lower. We know we're not going to catch everyone. It's not our ultimate goal. We would love perfection, but we really want to make sure we make it where it's less likely that a Black male can go through all the way through high school not having had a good reading experience. One of the things that triggered us, and this might be a little bit of a sad story.
Okay.
We were in a high school, and we'll leave the name out for a second. And we were giving out a book that was part of Books and Bars program. And one of the students noticed that we had a bunch of books and we were giving out books to every student because it was about 75 to 80 students that were participating in that particular program. So we give the student the book and the student says, oh, is this for me? When do I have to return it? Because she's thinking that this is part of the library. And we were in the library, so it makes sense. I said, no, this is yours to keep. And she looked at me with a kind of blank stare, not sad, but she said, this is the first book I've ever owned.
Wow.
Not like that, not a book like that, but just the first book as a high school student that they've ever owned in their life. And so in that, if you think about a student that can go from all the way through grade school, make it to 10th, 11th, 12th grade, not having owned a book, you can also extrapolate that maybe they never had books in their home.
Right.
Maybe they never had their own personal library. If you think like you look at mine, maybe they don't like these books, but at least they can explore and read a book and say, oh, I don't like that one. I want a book that says this, or I want a book that represents that. That discovery doesn't happen either. So that prompted us to do our next program, which is Lit at the Crib, which was to actually infuse books into homes by building home libraries.
Awesome. That story is so powerful. And it's those like anecdotes or stories, however you want to label them, that we overlook, like sometimes I feel like we're so into like numbers and outcomes and like realizing like it's those touch points that make all the difference. Like that,
right. You
opened a new world for that student. And it wasn't about like, oh, I dropped, $5,000 and built a library in their home or something. It doesn't have to always be these grandiose things, but the little things can have such big impact. So thank you for sharing that. How do you, if you're able to, can you speak to like what it's like when you're engaging students who it is their first time having a book, or the student who's like, I'm not reading, like I do that at school. I don't want to do that for leisure.
Right. One, it's tough. And I think this is also why this work is not being done that often, is that it's one-to-one. It's intimate. It's not a cookie cutter program that you throw out there and then hopefully it lands. You actually have to sit one-on-one with students, and we try to do little small groups. Sometimes one-on-one is not as possible, but three to one may be more possible. But the way those conversations typically work for us is that we don't start with the book. We sit down and just say, one, let's get to know each other. And we start to build that bridge and connection to one, so they understand that we're not just here to push books. We don't have a scholastic t-shirt on and saying we're trying to make sure we get these sales up. We're actually wanting to be here for that particular student that day and going forward. And so we start with that. Start with them, start with their interests. What are you interested in? What is your reading experience? What has it been in the past? And like you said, some have said, I don't like reading, don't have time, don't want to read, I had a bad experience. And then that's a great place to start, because then you can say, well, what happened that made you have a bad experience? Well, the books were so corny. It was about some old white dude in the castle. I don't want to read that.
Right.
Bingo. Now we got something, right? That's not it. We're not going to jump on that just yet. Well, okay, what are your interests? Well, I love hip hop. Are you good? Can you spit? Yes. Yeah. Instead of getting a book around hip hop, how about you spit? Oh, you put me on the spot, and then now it becomes like a club, right? Before the book comes in, before you put the book and the club together, now it's a club. We're together, we're bonding.
Yeah.
Then you can say, all right, look, I'm here to talk about reading a little bit. How about if I found a book that matched your interests, didn't duplicate the bad experience you had, right. Would you try it? And sometimes they hem and haw and they say, I don't know if I can. This teenagers talking, right?
Right.
But then they say, okay, how about this? Just read the jacket. If the storyline seems good, and you take it home, you try reading a couple of pages, I'll be back in a week or two. If not, I put it to the side, we just keep rapping. You can keep spitting and I'll hit the tables and make a beat. But a lot of times what happens is they'll say, all right, this seems interesting. I'll try it.
Okay.
When do I need to check it out? It goes right back to that same story. They haven't. I said, no, this is yours. Free of charge. You take it home. You don't like it, bring it back. I can give it to someone else or whatever. No pressure. You don't have to write a report. I'm not taking notes on how many pages you read. That's not the goal here. And so that's how we approach those types of students. And that's actually what we tell people to try to do at home.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question of like, how does this translate? Because when I hear you talking, I love the approach. And I'm also wondering like how much of you being a new person plays into that, right? Because I don't have that history with you. You don't necessarily know that maybe I'm a bad student or whatever kind of connotations may be prohibiting this student from like exploring their love of reading or unfound love of reading. But a parent who maybe has a contentious relationship or to your point before of like, they don't read themselves. Like, how would you tell them to like start that process?
So this is a great point. Great question. We get this all the time. And usually we can tell a little bit about that relationship with the parent and the child by the way they ask the question.
Okay. Sometimes
they'll say, hey, I'm really interested in what you guys are doing. Love it. I got a son and I've been trying to get him to read.
Right.
I already know that you're pushing. You're saying, read these books. You better sit down and read these books for 30 minutes, whatever. Now it becomes not an enjoyable experience, but it becomes something you're forcing them to do. And guess what? They've already gone to class and been forced to read whatever was there. And oftentimes the stuff that they're saying you should read is not even something attached to what they would want to read. It's attached to what they read as a child or something they saw on TV. One parent even came up to me and said, yeah, I used to love this classic, The Scarlet Letter. And I was like, that's the book you tried to get your student who doesn't like reading to read? That's where you started, not something in graphic novel format, not something related to their interests.
Right.
Scarlet Letter? Really?
No. I mean, I love reading and I'm not a huge fan of the Scarlet Letter.
No, these are real life stories. And so the coaching of the parent is important as well. So one of the things you mentioned around I'm a different voice. That is exactly the point. We come in and we tell them, say, we're the cool uncle. Our goal is to make this whole entire activity, this lifestyle fun.
Right.
And so our approach is always going to be different than a parent. But that doesn't mean that the parent can't take some of the tactics that we're doing, like what we said about tying it to their interests. So I think my son is on the call today, Brandon Frazier. He will tell you that one of the first books that he and I read, including his brother, was a book that he recommended.
Mhm.
It was a book around, it had virtual reality, it had gaming, and it was a fun, fast-paced young adult book.
Mhm.
He is a gamer. He is a computer kid. He
Oh,
likes that kind of stuff. Now, this was later in his high school career. Now, what if I had been listening and trying to use the tactics that I'm now employing at Black Men Read? So I'm giving myself some accountability here.
right.
What if I did that same thing when he was in middle school or late elementary school? We would have been further along in his reading journey than we are today. So
Yeah.
there's a part that all of us can play, whether we have a child, whether we're a teacher, or actually the person in the barbershop or the uncle
Right.
or aunt. So all of us play a role in this.
Right. And I love that you said that it's everybody's responsibility. And the other thing that I really love was, and correct me if I'm saying it wrong, is meeting the child where they are. So instead of being like, hey, the Scarlet Letter is my favorite book, everybody was reading it, it was all the rage back
Right. It was
then.
all the rage.
Yeah. Really tapping in and hearing the student and recognizing that they have interest too,
Right.
and they're valid. And yeah, so I really appreciated that.
And you can't put a time on it. You just got to put in the work and listen.
So I want to switch gears just a little bit. One, I want to talk about like how when you talk, it's not switching gears completely, but a segue. You were talking about it's everybody's role. How can folks get involved? Like if somebody's watching this, because it will be on YouTube, and if somebody's like, hey, I'm in PA, Pennsylvania, and I want to do this, like, what does that look like? Or if there are folks, to your point, who maybe aren't like wanting to start a chapter per se, but are looking to support those Black men in their lives now, is there like an arm of like a mentor the mentor type thing, or is there a way that people can start chapters? If you could speak to that.
So if that is the question that comes up from anyone who's watching this, that is perfect. One, we have a number of opportunities you can do virtually. And so if you want to help with the organization itself, we have, a board that's all spread across the country. We have individuals who help with certain pieces of the organization, like some of our book club admins are not here in Virginia. They're running chapters virtually in other places. So there's opportunities there. So we're always looking for help in that source. So if you got a talent in marketing, you got a talent in fundraising, or maybe you're really good at writing letters, anything, we can probably use your talent in some portion or fashion in the organization. Now, what if you wanted to get involved with, hey, I'm a budding reader, don't really read a lot, maybe it's 2 books a year, or if any, a great place to start would be our book club. Our book club is virtual. It started that way. It still is. We do have a local in-person chapter here in Richmond, well, sort of, depending on the COVID variation days. But if you want to join that, you can always fold in. You don't even have to read the book to show up to the book club. Again, we're trying to read. You don't. No pressure. No one's checking at the door saying you didn't read the book. So we make the format, and we're very militant about this, make the format so that there's questions about the book specifically. Like, we don't say go to page 156. We say, hey, this theme was in the book, this character, what'd you guys think of that? But we also have questions that are, because usually our book club reads nonfiction.
Okay.
There's always questions that are really relevant to if you read the book or not.
Right.
So for example, we're reading The Victory of Greenwood by Carlos Moreno, and it talks about the Tulsa massacre, but really from the perspective of the people in the city, not necessarily the massacre itself. And so we could talk about entrepreneurship. We can talk about supporting your community, protecting your community, education. We can talk about those pieces, and you don't have to have read the book. So that's a great place to start. Another way is if you want to get active in volunteering, not just on the organization side, but you want to do some work, think about it this way. We have virtual readings with elementary schools. So we go on Zoom calls like we're, using almost every day now, and we're reading a book to a student. So you can do that anywhere.
Awesome. I just couldn't miss the opportunity to like connect that, because I was like, I know somebody's going to watch and be like, hey, I want to get connected.
Right. And I wouldn't be an executive director if I didn't say you can also give us, some of the money that
open your pocket, write a check, PayPal,
swipe the card,
swipe your card, whatever.
We take Bitcoin too, and I'm joking. We don't take Bitcoin.
You said you don't take what?
We don't take Bitcoin.
Oh my gosh.
It's the only thing we don't
please,
take.
Support. I do want to make sure that we did have a moment where we can promote how people can plug in. So yeah, you can volunteer, you can write a check, or you can be an overachiever and do both, volunteer and write checks. Those
if you have books on your shelf that you're just not going to read, that Toni Morrison book has been looking at you for 15 years now. That book can go to someone else. We just instituted a new initiative where we're adopting little free libraries. So in some of the Black communities, they have a little free library that's been neglected for years, and they're empty.
And you're like bringing them back to life?
Bringing them back to life.
Nice.
So if you have books, you can send those and we'll make sure to get to the right spots across the country.
That is awesome. Awesome. So now for real, I'm going to switch gears. Can you talk about what it's like to be a Black executive director of a nonprofit? I think that this past year, or now it's going to be like 2 years soon, there's been a lot of attention, right, on racial and social injustice, and like how can we support and celebrate Black and Brown initiatives, nonprofits, etc. And so, one, I want to know, have you seen a shift since 2020, particularly May 2020, when the world kind of like set on fire and just still continues to burn? And then what are kind of some things that you've learned, lessons learned? Because I'm sure there also will be folks who are listening who are like, I have this great idea and I'm nervous, or I don't know what to do or how to do it.
So that was an amazing question. I would say for us, we went head first. We just jumped right in. We didn't try to figure it out. We didn't know what a 501c3 was. We didn't know the forms to file. We just said, this is what we wanted to do.
Right.
We had a mission. We had a couple people that we wanted to be involved in it, and we just went. That is not the best way to go if you're not someone who can persevere through a lot of stumbles. So if that's not your character, you're going to get, disheartened by some things that you didn't do right at the beginning. That's not the best way to go. So what I would suggest for anyone who's doing that, because I think there's a lot of need, specifically as we're starting to uncover more in this environment, a lot of inequities, people are speaking out more. And actually, something that's actually very positive is that you're getting a lot more allies stepping out and using their voice and their platform to say, this isn't right. I've benefited from the other side of it. It's time we do something about this, but I don't know what to do. What do I need to do from you? So in our book club, one of the changes we saw people trying to reach out to us and fairly or unfairly asking us to talk to them about racial issues. So we took that as an opportunity to say, it's not fair that we're the ones that's having to educate people, especially of, white persuasion.
Right.
But I would rather go out and try to educate and try to make a wave of change than to let this moment pass. And so we actually had a book club series at the Chesterfield County Library about that same thing. We're trying to be a part of that change.
Nice.
The other thing that's changed as far as like people wanting to come and help was that you get a lot more of the the donorship, a lot more of the advocacy in their organizations. And so those things are happening as well. I would say for anyone who has a cause that wants to get yourself a little bit organized, know what you want to do, know how you're going to do it a little bit, and then get with people who know how to organize. So Collective 365 is one. You can always reach out to us. We can help you through some of the things that we did at the beginning. But start to talk to some of these nonprofits to say, all right, I have this idea, but can I bounce some organizational type stuff at you? How would I go about finding board members? How would I go about finding funding to get set up? What were the mistakes you made that I just don't want to duplicate? Or maybe it's something you found was so easy to avoid. Now that you've gone through it,
right?
Maybe something that I could do something about. Those are the things that I would do. I would have done better about that. I just said, I got this. We're going to change the world. And I didn't even reach out for help. And the help was sitting right there.
Yes. But I think sometimes, hindsight's 2020, but when it comes to reaching out, I think there are so many layers to that, right? Of and again, I'm not speaking for all Black people, but some Black people grew up where it was kind of I'm going to keep my thoughts and my dreams close because I don't want somebody to steal them, or I don't want somebody to judge them. Right. And so trying to break that generational narrative, I think is part of it. And then also and this may not be what you were saying, but what I heard from this was the resources can be there in front of you, but you don't even know that it's a resource.
Right.
And
start talking it down.
Yeah. And so being able to speak out and say, this is what I have going on. Of course, we're not saying tell everybody and their mom. Of course, do some vetting of who you're sharing things with, but please, if Collective 365 can help you, if we can, not directly, even if we can point you to somebody that can, let us know. We are here to connect, build those bridges, because we want to see you thrive. You
just hit it. I don't want to leave that.
Oh.
Just because I'm not in your space, I might not be in the helping, kids with medical bills or something like that. Doesn't mean I don't know someone who is in that space. Yeah. Doesn't mean I don't know resources. So I may have looked at that. It wasn't for me because of where I am, but it could be something I was oh yeah, I remember, what was that company? They were good and they were looking for people just like you. The other thing too, and let's go ahead and kill some stuff while we're here.
Okay.
You said, look, this is the generational stuff. Roscoe Burnham's put it this way. He said, there is no pie. We're acting like there's just a piece this finite piece of resources, finite piece of opportunities, and we're all fighting for our little wedge. There's no pie. There's so many opportunities in our local communities. We could all start a nonprofit and all be successful and still not solve all of them. Yep. So don't feel you got to hold it tight because you don't want somebody to steal your idea or do what you're doing. Right. We actually like partnering with other literacy organizations. Guess what? The problem is so big, we can't solve it ourselves anyway. Right. So off my soapbox.
No, I think that's important to know. Is and then we'll in the same breath turn around and be oh, it's so much work, I can't do it all, so it's it can't be both and. It can't be I want to be the first and only, but I don't want to be the first and only, so I'm not going to share what I've learned for fear that somebody might do it better or be just doing it alongside me, right? So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I also want to ask you, since we're talking about advice, we talked about those who may be starting a nonprofit. What advice would you just give a young Black boy? And then what advice would you give a Black man?
Around starting a nonprofit specifically?
No,
or?
Just in general. If there's a Black boy, kind of, taking the Hill Harper approach, letters to a young Black brother,
Right.
what would you impart?
So let me start with the Black male, the man,
The adult.
the adult. I think for that one specifically, I think we have to specifically look at the things that have stopped us from being better connectors. We have some things in our psyche, in our history, that has made it where we're just not touching specifically like the young people. We're not reaching out in the organization. We're not, bonding as well. And a lot of that has to do with some of the historical things that we've been taught. We feel like at times it's competition. I got to be the best. I got to be the smartest. I got to read the most books. And instead of doing that, what's important for us is to continue to connect and make community. And I don't think we do that enough. We, as a Black man, I'm going to speak to the audience like I'm speaking to myself. I don't think we have done enough to support Black women. I don't think we've done enough to actively, support our school systems. I don't think we've done active enough to protect our communities. A lot of stuff is happening and we're not boots on the ground doing things. I think that's part of the things that we need to change and address them. It's one thing to know the history of how we got here. And we tend to harp on that a lot. Well, this is not how I was raised. I was single family, that kind of thing. That's not something I'm trying to tell you to ignore.
Right.
What I'm saying is that we're here now and you're grown and you have resources. You have a platform. You have the ability to do great things. Let's do them. Yeah. And so like we said, with our organization, we didn't know everything that we're supposed to know. We know a lot more than we did 3 years ago because we just kept working, kept walking, kept listening. For the young people, this one's harder because I always like to speak to when they are, because some are in different spaces. So you think about mine, I was in a single family home, but I was a weird single family home. I was that mixed blended house. No father figure, no father there, but I had father figures. I had grandma, I had 3 uncles, 3 aunts, 2 cousins, and a sister and my mom. So that's a weird situation, and I don't like to categorize as just single family home. But depending on where you are, I would say the one thing you got to do better about is speaking your voice and listening at the same time. I know it's hard to do both in 2 ears, 1 mouth thing.
Yes.
But tell us what's really happening with you. What is really going on? Because a lot of kids, I think, struggle with, they don't feel like anyone's listening. Yeah. But a lot of kids don't talk either. Yeah. And so don't feel ashamed that you're having these feelings. Don't feel ashamed that you're feeling inadequate. Don't feel ashamed that, no one's going to listen to me because I'm not from this side of the tracks. That voice, your voice needs to be heard, and you have an impact and you have ability to do something. The other thing is that there are some people, and I remember back in my life that were trying to plant seeds into my life, and I wasn't hearing it. I was, whatever, you're just an old dude and I don't want to talk about it, right? I would say if I had to go back to my younger self, I would say, man, that guy really had it. I appreciate it now, but I could have been better off and avoided some pitfalls if I was back listening.
Right. I think those are all great gems. I also want to dig a little deep when you said young Black boys using their voice. I think what I would love to see Black men doing, and just the community in general, is holding space for those voices. I don't think we as I run into so many of my friends who I have to educate them on, boys are humans. They can have feelings beyond just happy and angry. They are multifaceted, and we strip them of that as they grow. We're not nurturing that. So that would be the one thing I would want to add, because I just feel like we tell them listen. And I also want us to be mindful of their decision not to talk definitely comes from a place of knowing I'm not supported. I feel like kids have the best intuition. about people, and we lose that as we get older because other things come into play.
Right.
But the innocence of a child will tell them like, nah, they're not really checking for me. And so how can we as Black men, women, gender nonconforming, Black and brown folks, how can we create space that, to your point, affirms their experiences? And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation about how, and I loved how at the beginning you were like, just check in. Like, I just want to know what's going on with you. What do you like?
And we don't do it enough.
Yeah. And that goes back to that community building you were saying.
We don't do it enough. And I think we have a hard time listening because there's accountability that comes sometimes with listening. So you would have to take that information that's brought in and you got to do something with it. So someone does, say young man does reveal, hey, I have this issue. I'm not feeling this way. Now you got to own that. You got to hold it tight. It's not something that you're just revealing. So yeah, this kid was telling me this. You got to help that. They revealed a lot about themselves and they made themselves vulnerable, but at the same time, they made themselves very strong by releasing that. So now it's on you to do something with it. Whether it's just, hey, I'm going to be here to listen. Anytime you want to talk, if you want me to help you through that, that's fine too. But that's the other part. I think sometimes we don't want to hear it because then we got to do something with it. And that's hard. We love giving, we'll give you $5 in a minute. But when you got to give 5 minutes, every week to talk about someone's feelings, we get all uncomfortable.
Right.
And I think that's part of a lot of the history we've had as grown up adults.
Ooh, yes, this was good. Heavy conversation for a Friday.
No, this is, we got to deal with this stuff.
Needed.
We got to deal with it. We don't deal with it. We're just going to have a bunch of more, men who go up and we'll be in the same position in 10 years. Yeah.
Continuing that harmful, traumatizing generational narrative again. So for sure. So it's 6:15. I want to do two things: give you space to say anything that I didn't cover. And then also, I know we have two folks in the Zoom. If they wanted to say anything or ask a question, I wanted to give space for that before we wrap up.
Like I said, I appreciate the platform and the opportunity. We've been talking about nonprofits and the work we do. We have our specific lane that we're trying to play in, and we're trying to stay in that lane, not deviate too much. But there are a bunch of really great nonprofits, and we try to work with a lot of them. The Read Center is another good opportunity. So they focus more on the people who don't read. And I bring up the Read Center because, one, they've approached us as partners. We're playing in different sides of the lane. And I want to see more of us who are in that community, whether we came from it and moved out, whether we still live there in the Black community and brown community, to do something. I don't want us to be the doing is, well, I shared your tweet. There's a lot of work that is free that people need to have happen in the schools, in the community, hospitals, clinics, things like that. Yeah, all it requires is for you to step out of the house and do some work, or step onto a Zoom in some cases. And so I want to charge people to do those things. This stuff that we're talking about literacy. We could talk about the health rates. We could talk about a lot of different things, economics, parental adequacy. We could talk about a lot of different things. And some of the numbers that we're seeing in the Black community are just horrifying.
Yeah.
And so we have to step in with blood, sweat, and tears, and money in some cases, but not all, and do something about it. So I know we're going to talk about Black Men Read, and we want you to be a part of that. But if you got out and did something for another nonprofit, that would be amazing as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that reminder. I'm going to open the floor to the two folks that are in the Zoom, if they have any questions or comments for us before we say goodnight. No questions, just here to support Brother Demetrius and his awesome vision and mission. Thank you, Kenneth, for being on the call. I don't think we have any questions, but I want to just say, yep, I don't have any questions, but this was a great talk. Yes, Brandon, I agree. It was a great talk. And I hope we continue to have conversations. And to your point, I think that was like the perfect way to end, of just that charge of like, it's not always a matter of like writing a check. Checks help, but it
Checks do
has to
help.
be, we have to find something between just a tweet and a check, because we know everybody doesn't have the check, but your time is so valuable. Your testimony is so valuable. And, that's why at Collective 365, we emphasize that everyone is needed in the solution. It's not just your money. It's your time, your talent, your testimony. And so thank you, Demetrius, for like bringing that kind of full circle for us about how it's okay to collaborate with other folks. It's okay to only give 5 minutes every week if that's what you have.
That's what you have.
But at the end of the day, you've got to give. You've got to be committed. We are the ones that have the answers. We didn't create the problems necessarily in a lot of cases, but we do have the answers because we're the expert of our lives. And so I think that was a really eloquent reminder for us. And so on that note, thank you, Demetrius, and all the work that you're doing with Black Men Read. I'm so excited. I'm a fan. I will continue to share your message and maybe even I shouldn't say coerce, gently encourage my husband to participate. Want to make sure everything is consensual. But yeah, I love what you're doing. And I also will look for some books to donate.
Okay.
I do have a hard time parting with books, but I'm going to look.
So look, it also will give you a chance to go out and get the new books that are out.
Yes, and I do buy book. Yeah. So great reframe. There you go.
There you go.
So again, on behalf of Collective 365, thank you, Demetrius. If you are interested in becoming a member of Collective 365, please visit our website up above. It is free to join. Like I said earlier, everyone is needed as we reimagine philanthropies and celebrate and invest in Black and Brown communities in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. If you're interested in supporting the great work of Black Men Read, that information will be in the comment or the description of this video. Please reach out and please, please, please share this video. It may touch somebody in a way that you didn't even anticipate. So please, please share. Thank you and have a great night.